beautiful souls, and welcome to another episode of WTF What's the Frequency, the show where we aim to show you how to engage with the frequencies of nature and the frequencies of the universe so that you too can get what you truly desire. And this week I've got a very interesting guest, 58th generation shaman from Alaska, Ulf Hefner, otherwise known as Dr. Mark Weisman. This man has immense wisdom on how to engage in nature, and he utilizes these skills to work particularly with people with PTSD and difficult traumas in their life. So join me, because I know we're going to be having a fantastic conversation as we welcome Ulf Hefner, Alaskan shaman, to WTF What's the Frequency. Hi Mark, how are you?
Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor to join you and your audience.
Oh, it's our absolute pleasure. It's not every day I get a shaman on the, a real life shaman on the show. So I really think a great starting point before we find out how you became a shaman is please tell our audience what your name actually means and where it comes from.
Well, that's a wonderful thing. I am the Alaska Ulf Hefner. The Ulf Hefner is a Norse legend, of which I know to be true. And the Ulf Hefners were of the wolf pelt. So, like our brethren, the berserkers, who were of the bear pelt, we chose to be represented by the wolf, and we joined in the spirit with the wolf. So the Ulf Hefner were more thoughtful. They weren't brute force like our brethren, the berserkers, who were strength and just kind of, bull in a china shop, so to speak. The wolf is a very smart animal. They hunt in packs. They're very intelligent. They're very tactical. And so the Ulf Hefner were more of special forces of their day. One of the other advantages of my birthright of being an Ulf Hefner is that we're in contact with what are called the Lenvedi. And the Lenvedi, again, a Norse term, which means the spirits of the lands. Vedi meaning spirits, land, of course, meaning land. So the Lenvedi could actually join with the Ulf Hefner in battle. And so they would, they could rise the lands against the armies facing the Ulf Hefners. So if you were...
Sorry to interrupt for a second, but that is so interesting because it's not just in Norse legends, is it? It's in quite a few fables from different religions and different cultures around the world. And this thought of being able to harness the power of nature and reform it as protection, I find fascinating. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that.
No, that's wonderful. And that's exactly what we did, so that when Ulf Hefner went to battle, chances are you'd have, as an example, you could have a typhoon rainstorm that would wash away the armies, or make it at least impossible to move forward, or maybe trees falling down, or a volcano erupting, or any type of nature-based event to rise up against the armies against the Ulf Hefner. Now, in my case, my 53rd great-grandfather was the first in our bloodline to receive this blessing of being indoctrinated into a group at the time of Ulf Hefner in northern Denmark, northwest Denmark. And so from that day till now, it has remained in the bloodline. Several of my ancestors have denounced it, have tried to avoid it, but again, it stays in the bloodline. And so
just to interrupt you again there, because I know you know my story. I got halted in my tracks, and it was like, you will be a healer, whether you like it or not, lady. You know,
Right.
have your ancestors had come across a similar thing where it's so strong, the bloodline, the frequency is so strong that they get stopped in their tracks, or they just get to a point where they realize that they can't avoid it any longer? Has that been sort of commonplace as well?
Yeah, I'm sure it is. My father, I knew my father. My father died when I was fairly younger, um, but he absolutely refused to really allow us to even talk about it. I mean, we weren't
Oh, wow.
allowed to talk, not even bring it up. Um, but there are stories, if you go back and you read some of the sagas and some of the very early writings, um, where there are men who were in different villages and they would get really cranky at night. They would get really just, well, my father was like that. He would be a total jerk at night as he went off to bed, before he went to bed. And so the traits were there. He just refused to use them, and refused to believe, and certainly refused to allow uh, my generation to even acknowledge it. I mean, we weren't.
So how did you? I mean, so you're in this, you're with this father who's ignoring it, won't talk about it, doesn't share any of his knowledge with you. How did it come to you?
Much later. I went through my shamanic journey. Started essentially about the same time he passed, where I went on a self-destruct period of time, about 2 years, which also followed 5 years of heavy drug use and alcohol and all the silly things that people do as a young person. And I wound up overdosing in 1989 on heroin. A stranger found me in a drain culvert, dragged me to his home, and detoxed me, essentially. And it was during the detox process where I faced a lot of demons, a lot of things in my head. At that point, I was empathic, and I've always been empathic, and I've known this. But these voices and these feelings and I just couldn't keep my hands on it. And
Mm.
so it kind of led me down this path of destruction. But it was during the detox where everything kind of came to light. Everything bubbled to the surface. And I spent about 3 months in detox after about 7 years of heroin, going through the feelings, the visions, everything. And it was all kind of, unfortunately, it was all blurry and all contorted and twisted. 3 months later, I was detoxed. The man who had saved me gave me $500 and his old truck and said, "Go,
Wow.
never come back." I did. I went to Washington to join the rest of my family. 4 months later, I met my shield maiden, and we've been now married for over 33 years.
Oh, how
And
wonderful.
so
How
yeah, I mean,
wonderful.
every door, when we talk about the challenges, we learn, we grow. I wouldn't have found her. I don't know that Freya would have given me her had I not gone through what I went through. Because it was once I got married, and my wonderful shield maiden, a very stout Christian, um, and she led me to understand the power of belief, the real energy that is transmitted from us when we fully believe something, when it's no longer a question, or if there's doubts or anything, but we fully believe it. That's the energy that she has. And so she kind of taught me that as we went forward. I would go on to become ordained in the Christian church, and because I felt drawn, I was still, now I was beginning to understand my empathic gifts, and I understood kind of what the value was for other people, I started kind of putting it all together, and so I became ordained in the church. But there was always questions, right? There's
Yeah.
always that nagging question, and one of the major questions I had was, where, we talk about where humans come from, where the physical forms come from, and that kind of old hat at this point. Um, but where did the gods come from? Where does
Absolutely,
God come from?
absolutely. Yeah, it's never deep enough, is it? For those of us that have the questioning minds. And I used to, I got brought up in the church, quite a strict religious family. And I used to sit there and think, well, yeah, fine, but where did they all come from? Why is there a stop point
Well,
in the
where did the
story?
gods come from? Why are we saying that the only people who will get to this place they call heaven or Valhalla, why do they have to understand this one doctrine and act this one way? How do these people know? How can you explain to people that were here before this understanding came around? So there was just so many questions that led me further down my discovery. I studied the practice of Islam. I studied Hinduism. I studied Confucianism. I studied pretty much every noted religion that I could find, including the indigenous people, because I kind of grew up along a Navajo reservation. So I was steeped in that knowledge. I mean, I understood their perception, and I just couldn't find anything that answered some of these critical core questions. It was in 2017 that I was helping two gentlemen who had just returned from combat in overseas. I was counseling them and helping them to find living mechanisms, I call it, to get through what they experienced, a very severe PTSD. And it was during that conversation that the Lanvetti made their appearance to me, and they kind of introduced themselves and told me what was going on,
And sorry, just
and
to jump in there for another minute. So when you say they introduce, because a lot of people aren't sweet. You can say, oh, they introduced themselves to me, and I know what you mean. But to everybody else, did they knock on your door? Did they appear at the end of your bed one night? When you say they appeared and invited you in, how? What does that look like?
that excellent question and excellent observation. Um, I had been hearing what I thought was these thoughts that were not my own. They were, I was thinking about stuff that to me seemed well above and beyond what I knew. Okay. So I was having these thoughts. And it was during one of the sessions with one of these men where I caught out of the corner of my eye, I caught what I thought was movement. And as I kind of turned to look at what it was, uh, it flashed. So it was like this bright flash, and it just dissolved. And then I was back into the conversation with this man, and I heard another voice behind me saying, "We're here to talk. We need to help you understand your journey." And so I was very confused, very freaked out. And we finished up the session with the man, and he left, and so I was alone in my office. And it was there I began to hear what they were saying. I actually heard audio signals which said, "We're here to help you understand. Here's your journey. This is what we've learned." And what they showed me in the first day was not what I remembered of my life, my past, what really happened.
Oh, very interesting.
Because that's right. Because as I went through these events in my life, it changed my perspective. And so even looking back, I wasn't really seeing the real event. I was seeing my mind's eye of the event, which is very different than what really happened. And so we spent that day, it was about 5 hours. We spent that time looking at my life from their eyes. So from a third party observer of watching this movie of my life. Whereas I'm saying, oh, I don't remember that happening. I don't remember that happening. And they're like, it did. It
Oh,
did.
mate,
Trust us.
I can't think of anything more incredible, really. I mean, it must
It,
from a different camera angle, isn't it? You know, here's a
it,
different
it
camera
was.
angle, you
It
know, or
really was.
someone who was standing over the street watching you. This is what they saw.
Right.
And it really is down to that. We all have a different perspective on what's happening. We're all having a different experience, aren't we? And I say to people all the time, your mind lies to you constantly. Go with what you feel. You know, what do you
Right.
feel about it? What are the emotions of the past, not what you're thinking. Sorry, I'm
Right.
just wanted to get in there with that.
You're wonderful. And that led me, that happened periodically through the next, say, 2 years. And then in January of 2020, as I've written in the book, I had an experience where Odin came to me in my backyard and actually was a live, living vision whom I swore allegiance to as my birthright of an Ulf Hefnar. Now, at that point, he was the one who informed me that I was born to do this. I had carried this blood for 53 generations, and so this is what I'm supposed to do. And so that kind of changed my whole trajectory in life. And I really began full-time uh, learning and growing. One of the things that was very quickly explained to me is I read all the books about the Norse, and I read all the books about the Celts. And I was quickly informed that they're not all true.
Oh, that, well, you know, there's a
So,
funny old thing, isn't it? History rewritten to whoever wins the battle, and the true
well, you got to
story.
remember, whenever you talk about the Norse and the Vikings, all of their history was oral.
Mm.
So all of their stories, all of their lessons, all of their everything about that society was oral. And it wasn't until the 12th century that you find a Christian author writing Norse history, Norse mythology. Norse Snorlason of Iceland is who gave us most of what we know as the Norse history, as the Norse mythology and legend.
Because
I mean, there's some others.
everything was stories, wasn't it? And it was very much, you know, singing. I know when I've been to Sweden, Denmark, Norway, you know, I've been lucky enough to hear really old folk songs, and they have very strong messaging, but also very strong vibration. They take you on a journey. They're not just songs, they're a bit more than that.
That's right. That's right. And that's why, you know, when you think about Norse magic, predominantly the Norse magic, you get to poetry. They were convinced that poetry was a gift from the gods. And so as it teaches lessons or it retells stories of your past, of your history, of your emotions, poetry is a way that we tell our life story. And so they put a lot of value in that. So
this is all fascinating, but we just need to take a very short break now. And when we come back, I want to pick up on something that you very glibly dropped in there that everybody's going to be fascinated about, and that is magic. So we all need magic in the world, and we all need to know how to access it. So please stay with us, everybody, while we just have a quick break, a little mention from our sponsors, the wonderful LifeSpring.
Ignite your vitality. Meet the LifeSpring Gold Card, a quantum leap in wellness. Revitalize your bioenergy, boost stamina, ease aches and improve your mental focus. Shield yourself from electromagnetic frequencies emitted from cell phones, laptops and other smart technologies. Restructure tap water, revitalize food and harmonize everything around you. Elevate well-being with LifeSpring, made in the USA. Order today from VanessaElston.com.
And we're back. Thank you so much for staying with us. I'm here with Uf Hefner having a fantastic conversation about Norse mythology, Norse magic, Celtic magic, and the power of the vibration of that. So just before we cut for a break, we were just about to talk about magic. So over to you.
Magic is magic, but you have to understand what magic is. Magic technically isn't magic. Magic is simply energy movement. And so when we talk about manifestation of something on the physical plane, all we're simply doing is exerting our energy to others, other physical, spiritual entities around us, who then for lack of a better way to describe it, they simply reallocate the resources and kind of move them into your path so that you trip over them as you go down your journey. This is the way magic works. In Norse mythology, there were two forms of magic. There was a seer. Seers required, when they put out energy, they were asking other spiritual entities to assist and to provide additional energy to make whatever happen. And then there was spackraft. And spackraft is the next level, where I actually have all the energy I have inside of me. I don't need spiritual entities to help. I can simply exert enough energy. Now, you probably recognize seer magic. And you say, I do? Sure you do. All of us have said a prayer. A prayer is simply the incantation of a spell spoken out, to where we're asking a spiritual entity to provide the solution. So a prayer is simply a seer magic spell. That's it.
But the thing I was
a little different.
Sorry, I just wanted to get in there and say something else, because obviously spent a lot of time praying and totally get what you're saying. But to me, there's always a missing bit, which is, and so it is, the fact that it's happened already, that my faith propels me, or has propelled me there already. So I always felt that prayer only ever took you halfway there. Sorry, back to you.
No. You're spot on. And when we talk about magic, you're exactly right. We don't look at the actual moment of manifestation, right? The actual moment of creation. That's not our job. That's the universe. That's what it does. It has done and will do forever. So what we do when we talk about our prayers and our incanted spells and whatnot is that we are focusing on the life actually after the creation event. What will I do with the money I create, right? So boom. So we're beyond the creation event. Now, what I have recently learned is that what we need to do is create the path from us to the creation event. So we're building up an event. So as an example, if I want $1 million, okay, I'm envisioning my life with $1 million. Well, firstly, I need a way for the universe to connect the $1 million to me. So I got to go buy a lottery ticket.
Yeah, right? And also, reminder here to everybody, some guy's just not going to turn up at your door and go, here's $1 million, are they? You've got to create the path, clear a path through the forest almost, haven't you?
Right. That's exactly right. You have to create that path between the creation event and yourself, and then you focus your energy on the after effects. So I'm spending money. And we see this in nature, and people have asked me, well, give me an example. Well, that's great. The perfect example is pregnancy.
All right.
Okay. We have the 7 minutes of fun, right? And then we're cuddly and we're nice and hopefully loving but we're not actually concerned with the creation, with the actual DNA assembly that's going on inside the woman, right? Now, nowadays you get this little test and it comes up and it says, "Oh, we're positive. We got all the hormones going." Where does a woman's mind shift to? It shifts to providing for the child, loving the child, dressing the child. What am I going to do for a house, for a home, nesting? All of these things come to mind. That's after the creation. Okay, so the DNA did its job. The genetics of mom and dad and all the chemistry and ancestry all came together and did its job. The universe did its job. A woman's or a mother's focus turns to, how do I care for the child? And so we're coming to
future
the
events, isn't it? It's
right.
all about the future event. It's like not worrying about cooking the pie, if you will. It's, nature's taking care of that. It's been doing it for centuries, millennia.
Right.
All I need
It's
to
good
do,
at it. Right.
yeah, really expert. And
Yes.
all I've got to do is make sure I'm prepped for, when it's all cooked.
Right. Right. How am I going to eat it? What spices do I add to it when I get it to the table? We're beyond the creation event. So the creation event is handled by the universe. Our focus, ergo our energy, is all going to the after event. And that's really what we want to focus on, because that kind of frees up the clutter around the creation event, that the universe can actually do what it's done for millions of years, is
But you
create
know what?
stuff.
It was interesting. I was with somebody else about this the other day, and I said, I hate all this manifestation rubbish because people don't realize about sending it off to the gods, to chaos, whatever you want to say. Because if you're too specific, I want a blue house in the city of London, in East Ham, in one of these 3 streets, you're making it terribly tricky. And also, you're limiting your beliefs, aren't you? So there's like heavy energy coming into something that should be really light. And you're not giving the universe the chance to really reward you. Because, there might be a fantastic, even better house, twice the size,
Right.
covered in gold, super shiny, but it's 3 blocks away and you've just limited that completely.
Right.
So I love what you're saying, because it's so in alignment with sort of the way I look at things. It's just different language, really.
It really is. And the thing that most people don't understand, and this is where I do a lot of teaching about, is when we talk about the energy that we're putting out for the desire for creation. We want to create something. We want to do something. And we're putting out this energy. We have to remember that we, through our past, have programmed our minds to almost resist creation. So, we try something and it fails for whatever reason. That's it. Oh, I can't do that. Well,
Yeah.
can't is a bullet in the universe. I mean, that's it. So what we need to think about is, I always hear the saying that insanity, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and expecting a different outcome. I disagree. While that may be a physical plane thing, I do the same prayer. Who knows what energy I'm going to get into it?
Well, I agree with you. And also, I have a thing that, there's that sort of 10,000 hours, isn't there? I wanted to learn to throw knives, and I just thought it'd be an interesting thing to do. But I wasn't any good at all until I'd done, well, I didn't even start to be good till I'd done about 2,000 hours. So, this whole failure thing, and it's really fear-based, isn't it? It's like, oh, boo-hoo, I burnt my finger once, I'm not going to try and make a fire again. Well, you're going to be cold then, aren't you?
Yeah.
I'm in the UK. Any guy I know, you better know how to make a fire, otherwise I'm not interested. Or anyone in the winter really know how to
Right.
spark one.
Right. Yeah. And we do it, and some of that programming comes from others, right? That we accept their authority. Oh, this person tried this and it didn't work for them, so chances are it's not going to work for me. We don't realize the power of the programming that we're putting into our own mind. We just say it arbitrarily and we move on. But when you, as a physical form, when you utter something, when you choose to make words, you've exerted the energy in your mind to structure the sentence. You've structured the word choice. You've come through all these decisions. This is all energy that's being bundled together, and then you're going to move the facial muscles, the throat muscles, and all those things to actually vocalize the word. That's a powerful bundle of energy.
It's amazing,
that you just
really,
sent out
if you
to the
think
universe.
about it, isn't it? If you think about us as a giant computer, how much programming would that take to make happen? And yet we take it for granted, and we're not very clever with it, are we? We're not immaculate with our words, particularly when we speak about ourselves.
And we just don't realize the power of our own programming. And so we're programming ourselves for, minimalization. They say, science says that we use like 2% of our brain. And I mean, it's a crazy low number. And I'm like, well, why? Why is that? Well, many times we're programming ourselves so that these actions that we're taking, these thoughts that we're having, these events that we are bringing into our lives are done without much thought. We just kind of throw it out there, and then we kind of suffer the repercussions of that.
And also, let's just talk about that at a moment, because it's the moaners, isn't it? The people that are never happy with their lot, the people that are never grateful, the people that live in drama or create drama over nothing, bitching and moaning and backstabbing and, everything's unfair in their life. And guess what? Speaking all of that all the time is just going to bring more unfairness, more bitching, more moaning, more negative, heavy, boring, unpleasantness, isn't it, really?
It really is. And I deal with people all the time who come to me and they say, well, I've been this religion for a really, really, really long time, and I really da. And I say, well, what do you believe? What are your beliefs? Oh, well, I really don't have any. Yes, you do. Just admit them. If they don't suit you today, it's time to change your pants. It really is. It's time to change, because you're growing, you're changing. These events that are happening in your past, leading you up to this moment, have altered your view. Why haven't your beliefs kept up with your views?
Absolutely.
And so you get this contradiction between where we've programmed ourselves and what our personal history, our immediate past is teaching us. And we get this disconnect, and now we're trying to reconcile the differences. And it's no wonder people are anxious and nervous, because they're not willing to let go of their belief to match what they're living. And so they're struggling. And this is a challenge I see kind of globally right now. as people kind of wrestle with this idea of, certainly the pandemic brought quite a few doubts all of a sudden that maybe we didn't have before. But I think um, just in a lion's share of people, we have this massive disconnect between what today's events are teaching us via the news, via whatever channels we're dialed into, and where our beliefs sit. And that disconnect is now where I think a lot of people are really struggling.
I totally agree with you. And the numbers of people that are coming to me is quite off the scale. I mean, it used to be mainly executives that were overworked, burnt out, and anxiety and depression was linked to overwork. And, you've discussed it earlier. When you're in that state, you lean on other things, don't you? Substances, alcohol, etc. But I'm finding more and more young people coming to me looking for answers and desperate, feeling really suicidal, really heavily weighed down with anxiety and depression. And I'd always ask all my guests this, one of the things I think is to blame is social media, this level of comparison, this level of sort of constant marketing that your life isn't perfect unless you got designer pants and matching glasses, and we're so removed from what is important. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is the shamanic connection with nature and how that can so easily start the healing with anxiety and depression.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Jord, as I referred to her, Jord is Norse, of course. She's the Norse goddess of the earth. So um, she promotes energy, love, light, warmth. I mean, she has all of the energy that we really need to exist. And the more we pave over her, the more challenging it becomes for us to get back to her and to embrace her again. Um, the thing I love about Alaska, obviously, is there's lots of Jord to see. Um, and you don't have to go very far to be with her.
Yeah.
I can walk probably 5 minutes, maybe, from my house. And I'm pretty much in wilderness, where I can be with Jord and I can communicate with her. And I think it's very important. They did a study. Oh, it's been a decade or so, where they talked about putting in like live plants into office spaces and all of these things. Um, and I mean, she's wondrous. And I think the further we get away from her, the further uh, that energy, the stabilization of energy, goes away.
Do you know what?
Because
I couldn't agree with you more. I've just spent the weekends in London, and like you, I live in the countryside now, and 5 minutes from my house, I'm standing in a field, with sort of crops growing. But to be in a place that's overloaded with electrical current, with people's energy, being on the subway and being packed on with 100 people, really, really close quarters, all the electricity in a metal bullet as you charge under a city that's all going on above your head and all the noise. I have to really ground myself. Otherwise, I start to feel sick. It's just too much for me. And coming
agreed.
home, I was going, off the tube onto a train. And it wasn't until I could finally see the green of the countryside that I started to feel at one with myself, if that makes sense again. I
It
felt really
absolutely does.
balance.
Yes, yes, yes. And there's times. I mean, it's one of the things I love about going out to the village, is that in the airplane, of course, you're kind of disconnected, but literally, there's no runway. There's no. I mean, you land on a gravel patch, so
Wow.
you're landing on Mother Earth, and you very quickly you're able to reestablish connection with her, and Unlike being here in Anchorage, you know, everything's paved. We have this big international airport. And I mean, you have to get completely out of the terminal before you can take your shoes off and actually step on, you know, Yord and just feel her again. It's insane. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you when we talk about our frequency and you're either high strung of being in the city, so you got that real high, crazy vibration, and add to that wireless, microwaves, radio, cell phones, all the other electrical sources that are just really jazzing up, if you will, this energy that's coming through, and then you get somewhere where you can just put your feet in the ground, and it just settles right on down. It just right down to where, you know, Yord is just breathing in and breathing out.
It's like an enrichment, isn't it? It's an enrichment of your being with every breath that you take when you've got bare feet on the ground and you've got that sort of, without being religious, as above is below, you know, you all become part of it. And, you know, the only good thing about London, from my point of view, is, you know, I've got friends with gardens, thank the Lord, and it's full of parks. And people will say to me, you know, why do you walk everywhere in London? I always have to zip through a park, otherwise I feel like I'm going insane. You know, if I go and see my brother in his offices in Canary Wharf, you know, great tower blocks, 3,000 people in each one. They've all got 2 phones, laptop, tablet, or 5 screens. I honestly get off the tube and my ears are buzzing, you know, that I can't wait to nip back over to somewhere like, you know, Regent's Park and just don't care what the weather's like. I've got to zip my shoes off for a few minutes and, you know, ground back in again. And I know it sounds crazy to a lot of people, but when I lived in London, I didn't really realise what a scratchy frequency I was on very often.
Mother Yord will just kind of recenter, get us all right back to normal. And you know, for me, one of the things that Yord does for me is he really ties me into the other life forms too, so I can really begin to appreciate, you know, the trees and the grasses and the animals that have blessed our planet. All of these things then really come into focus, whereas when you're walking around the city, you're really not seeing that. I have a friend, he lives here in town, and I said, have you ever had venison? He said, what? What's venison?
What?
Oh my gosh. And you live in Alaska? Really?
Shame on you.
I had to take him, and we got some venison out of my freezer, and I prepared it for him, and we had some venison. And he's like, well, this kind of tastes weird. This tastes really strange. I was like, yeah, it does. You know why? Why? I says, because you're actually absorbing some of that spirit from that animal. And that's throwing your microwave oven electricity, energy signal, it's throwing it out of whack, because the animal, which gave its life for us, our sustenance, that animal is gifting you with an energy that's more closer to Yord. And so your body just can't handle it. And so now he comes to me, he calls me, he says, hey, when's the next time you're cooking venison? I want to come over. And so I was like, yeah, exactly right.
I mean, you know, people just don't think about what they put in their mouths. You know, my kids used to go mad because I'd never let them have a McDonald's. And now they're like, thank you so much. Otherwise we would be the size of houses, you know, and like, thank you for being such a, you know, an evil mother on the biscuit and cake front. But, you know, as a result, they're very healthy and they have a really, you know, a taste for really good food, and they're conscious of food. They're conscious of where it comes from and how it's going to sustain them. And also, I think it's very important because so many children think chickens come ready wrapped on a shelf in the supermarket, that they realize that it's a life force, that you're ingesting a life force, that it's a gift to you, and it's an energetic exchange, isn't it? And if
Yes,
you're
it
not
is.
grateful for that, you're not going to feel the full benefit of it. And also, when you first start doing it, I mean, I'm very lucky. I grew up in the country. I've always eaten really well. But, I've seen it when I've served kids food. They're used to having, dinosaur-shaped chicken, I don't know what the hell they are, and chips, and I give them beef bourguignon, and they would be like, wow, this is a real taste sensation. I feel great, and be like, well,
Right.
it's packed full of goodies. That's why, and really good frequency. And also, I think the fact that, people don't talk about this enough either. If you prepare something, if you cook it with love, then it will taste better, because the whole
It does.
frequency, it's
That's true.
a process, isn't it?
That's true. And that's exactly right. I mean, that's an energy transfer from either the cook or the animal itself that's coming into your system that you can absorb, and then it's going to help you grow, it's going to help you learn, it's going to help you appreciate really what's around you, much better than certainly McDonald's could ever hope to do, for sure. But yeah, no, it's and it's just a knowledge, hey, this is, what are you eating, what are you putting in your body, drugs, alcohol, what are you putting in your body? And you have to have limits, you have to know what they do.
And I think something, we started this conversation talking about how you got into being a shaman, through ignoring it in many respects, or, having been kept away from it. And I think one of the things that I discover is that the best healers, the best shaman, the best anyone that's involved in healing, basically, has had a long and interesting life in order for them to have the gift of empathy and vision, to be able to be trusted enough to heal somebody and be very intimate with them, because it's a very intimate journey. And you touched on your work earlier that you do with veterans with PTSD. Tell us a bit more about that, because there's so many people with PTSD. It's not just veterans, is it? It's,
No.
judges on murder cases, it's police, it's, it could be anybody really. But tell us about your method, because I'm fascinated.
For the most part, I mean, what I try to do when I'm working with anyone is, firstly, we have to understand our value. There is value in us, not in a way that we wear some label, we wear some title, we live on some street, but the journey that we've led up to this point has created a chemical composition that cannot be replicated at all, ever. In the history of humans, you are unique. Even in twins and triplets, doesn't matter. Each journey is unique. We know, based on science, that when we're born, we're giving a snapshot of mom and dad's DNA, and that DNA is manipulated throughout our lifetime. And then when we have children, they get a snapshot of us, and then they go on and they continue their things. So one of the first things that I always do with anyone I'm working with is first establish their value, how unique and valuable you are, and explain to them how that happens. Because of your genetics, the genetics then release a certain level of chemistry within your body. They're called hormones, but same thing. It's all a chemical composition that your mind then interprets as emotion, very uniquely, different than anyone else. And that's value, because that composition and that interpretation of that composition is the energy at which you create an aura with. And your aura is then out as far as you want it to be. I mean, there's no geographical boundaries. There's no Wi-Fi distance. There's none of that. Auras can span across the globe. They can span across the universe. Doesn't matter. But that energy at which our borders of the aura are fluctuating at allows us to meet people, to fall in love with people, to like people or dislike people. That's the that frequency at the border when two auras meet. So if our frequencies are totally different, we're not going to blend. So we're probably not, I'm not going to dislike you, but I won't go out of my way to come over and give you a hug, right? I'm a hugger, by the way. It's my Norse
I
thing.
am too, but occasionally I get a, oh no, I don't want to hug you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Very rare, but it happens.
Yeah, I'm as you could tell, I'm kind of a big guy. So when I offer a hug, I don't know that I've ever been turned down.
I think it'd be gorgeous.
But that energy then brings other things and people into our lives that then continue to alter our chemistry and our energy and our growth. Because it's when we talk about spiritual entities wanting to give us knowledge and information and wisdom, that has to filter in through that aura as well. Okay, so if we're no, and that border is at this just erratic frequency, we're not going to get any spiritual energy. And it's not until we settle that down where we can actually go, oh, okay, now what? And then we're going to find where other people who are of like-minded are going to we're just going to meld together, because the aura frequencies are very similar or close enough to where they can match. And so I tell them that, when we're talking about what's the signal you're putting out, what are you saying without your mouth?
Yeah.
What are you saying?
Well, what's the frequency of your being, isn't it? Is it heavy or light?
Right.
What are you smiling or glowering?
Right. And that then dictates your forward life. The other thing that we always work on is understanding the translations or the alterations we've made to our personality based on past events. So what I mean by that is, one of the exercises I use is I get the man or woman and I say, all right, go over there, stand on the wall, put your back to the wall. Now, everything you've experienced in your whole life is on the other side of the wall. What are you feeling right now? Once we can start identifying what emotions they're actually experiencing, then we decide through further research, further conversation, we'll decide whether it's caused by a singular event or if it's a stacking. So we've had a bunch of events that kind of lead up to where we are. And then we say, okay, how can we resolve what you're feeling right now? Don't worry about the past right now. What's going to make this better right now? And we begin to kind of look at it from a present moment. Instead of carrying the past with us, recognizing what the past is, we can then step forward, working on whatever emotion. I'm feeling sad because one of the things I hear a lot, I'm feeling sad because many of the members of my team aren't here today because of actions that were taken. Okay, you're feeling sad. What would make you feel better? Well, if they were here. Okay, move that aside. We can't do that. What if you, instead of mourning them, we celebrated their successes? We looked at their achievements, their dedication, where they said, I'm willing to give it all
Yeah.
for your freedom, for you to go tell everyone about me. Okay.
So true.
So we kind of reverse the role of the feelings, and we kind of give them mechanisms that says, okay, every time you think about, hey, I went and I had a drink with a friend, and while we were drinking, I thought about my friends. Okay. What if instead of pulling out their Purple Heart, in the United States, I got wounded in combat medal. What about instead of pulling out that medal, put that one back, and we're going to pull out their Silver Star for the commitment they made to your team. And we start looking at that instead of the Purple Heart. We look at their achievements and not their. And so I kind of give them mechanisms, living mechanisms that they can take with them. Many times people will ask me for amulets or things. I use I don't know if you can see
Oh, I
that.
can see that. It's beautiful.
Yes,
Love
and now on
that.
the other side, it's just a symbol that was created in 13th century for the traveler, is how to find our way home. And so I give them ideas, and we can plant them so that every time they feel themselves going in a direction, an emotional direction that they don't want to go, we kind of change the direction. And I'm telling them the whole time, what you're doing as we do this is you're programming your brain. Okay, so you're programming your mind to stop looking at the negativities and look at the positivity. So another exercise would be, I want you to go out of your house in the morning on your way to work, and I want you to find 20 things in your world that bring you joy, that are just good, that are exciting. And I want you to write them down. And I want you to keep doing that for 2 weeks sometimes, and then we're gonna reevaluate that. And then when we come in and we talk again, I say, okay, you got 20 of these awesome things in your day. Now, how long did it take you to get those 20 things? Well, I think I got those on my way to work, so 2 hours. So if you got 20 in 2 hours, how many do you think you could get if you paid attention to a whole day?
And there's the trick. And we're back to magic again, aren't we? It's like,
Yes, we are.
People think magic is difficult, but it's about
It's not.
gratitude. It's about trusting having faith and using your imagination and accepting that you are able to create your future. I think that's the bit that we are dumbed down by, that society or the news or what have you. Oh, you couldn't possibly do that. You're not worthy. We're all worthy, and we're all so capable. And it's, it's something this show is all about. I just want something that one of my guests says to resonate with people so that they realize it's really not difficult and that people can switch on to this tomorrow. So I'm really, really gutted because we've come to the end of our time together. But I can't thank you enough, because I think that last process that you talked us through is something all our listeners can get hold of and take into their lives if they're suffering with anything difficult, really. It doesn't have to be terrible trauma, just anything that's knocking you off course, really. But before you go, can you just give us, I'm so grateful to you, if now, I can actually say it now, but what would you like to just say to our audience to sort of, spread your wisdom a little further and give everybody another sort of seed of hope, really?
And I think that the thing that I try to promote most, and I think you've already said it, and I will just echo it, is that we do always possess the power and the authority at which to create our own future. We're in the driver's seat. each one of us, the magic at which this needs to happen, it's all there. You've already got it all. You just need to stop convincing yourself that you don't. And live your life to the fullest. You know, do what, do the greater good for you. And love yourself. And everything else will happen as it should, according to the universe. It just will.
There you go. You heard it here from the shaman himself, Ishachna, otherwise known as Dr. Mark Weisman, we have been so lucky to have your wisdom shared with us today.
Thank you.
So grateful. And everybody, please like, review, comment, and please join me next week, Monday, 8 p.m. for WTF, What's the Frequency? And I look forward to seeing you then. Again, Mark, thank you so much.
Thank you. Love and light, my friend. Take care. Love yourself.